Mark Scar on KIOW, welcoming in musician Billy Craig to talk about, among other things, his new record. I call them records because I'm old. Beyond the Pale. Billy, welcome.
Hey, Mark, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing great. Just staying busy, and that's the way I like it.
I think I became aware of you through social media circles and then subsequently through Brownsville Station, a band some of our listeners will no doubt know from 70s hits like Smokin' in the Boys' Room. And now you've branched out and done some solo work, the latest of which I'd like to get into right now, and then we'll go backwards. Beyond the Pale, this is your first instrumental record, right?
Yeah, well, it's not really. I do have one called An Epic Tale. I pulled out some dusty tapes and added a bunch of guitars, but this is my first full-length instrumental, for guitar. Yep.
And your current single is Frampton, which obviously is an homage to Peter Frampton. Unfortunately, we got some sad news from him earlier this year, but obviously a big influence for you. Tell me about it.
Well, you know what? I was one of those kids that, I don't remember, I was 12, 13 years old or something like that bought the album called Frampton Framptons, the one with the studio versions of Baby I Love Your Way and Show Me the Way. And he came to town and did a show, and I was one of those kids that went there, and that it was one of those magic moments that changes your life. But he was kind of my first guitar hero, if you will. And I'll tell you what, Frampton Comes Alive, when you listen all the way through, the guitar is just phenomenal. And so that kind of took me down that whole road. And I never could get my hair to look that cool, but I went down the road and played, and I've done so much stuff over the years. Sometimes I forget about everything I've done, you know?
Sure. Right, exactly. So my question is, when you're doing an instrumental record, how do you come up with song titles for songs that don't have any lyrics?
I tell you what, that is extremely difficult. Up to a certain point, they're all numbered. Track 1, track 2, track 3, track 4, in hopes that something is the vibe, the feel of the song kind of pulls you in a certain direction, and something kind of hits you. So it is kind of a task to do that. Although the Frampton song, that particular tune, I was actually messing around with a couple of chords from Show Me the Way, and I just took these 3 chords and kind of swung it a little bit more, played it a little bit jazzier, and the melody from that song just kind of jumped right out at me, and it just kind of came together in that way. Once I added everything else, it was like, okay, you know what? And that's when the news came out about his muscle disease, and he was doing his final tour. And it just kind of took me back to those times when I was a kid listening to that stuff. And I've been through so much since then, it kind of took me full circle. And that's why that song, I named it as a tribute and homage to Peter.
Talking with Billy Craig about Beyond the Pale. Do you know, has Peter heard it?
That I can't guarantee you. I have a pretty good inclination that he has, because we've gone back and forth on Twitter and social media somewhat. So I know he's aware of the album and the song. So, and we've sent press releases and everything over to his people, you know, his booking agent and manager and all that kind of stuff. So I hope he has, and I hope he takes it the right way. Sometimes those big stars think that, you know, you're some kind of a weirdo or something. You know, but no, I'm just the guitar player kind of guy, and that's you know, I mean, and he's not he was just the start of it, you know, and there's a lot of like, for me, the Pat Travers all the way up to Eddie Van Halen, I went through a lot of different guitar players that really hit you in the soul, and people you wanted to emulate, and until you figured out that day where, I'm gonna give it a shot just to be myself. And really, when you think about it, that whole Beyond the Pale is just that. It's a tribute to a lot of guitar players, Ronnie Montrose, Eddie Van Halen, even like Alex Lifeson from Rush. All the guys. Manny Charlton, who is a friend of mine from Nazareth. As a matter of fact, he really likes the album.
That's always a good thing.
Absolutely. He gave me a very nice quote on it, and I was real happy about that.
You brought up Pat Travers. Have you heard his swing record yet?
I haven't. You know what? I was a big fan of Pat Travers when the live album came out.
Sure.
Actually, the first album I bought from him was Putting It Straight, and we used to do quite a version of Getting Better, the song, when I was a kid in high school, as a matter of fact. So, but no, he's got so many albums out, and which is great. And I'll tell you what, one thing I do want to tell you, if you haven't listened to Peter Frampton's latest albums, a lot of people stopped at the live album, and he's got, his last 5 albums are fantastic, especially his instrumental work. It's really good stuff, and people seem to forget that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, some people are stuck in 76, and so it goes. What inspired you to do an instrumental record right now?
One of the things that nobody's doing it. There's a lot of really great virtuoso players, and my goal really wasn't to come out and be another Joe Satriani or any one of those kind of guys, because those guys are like, they're God with fingers, and they do really, really incredible stuff. I wanted to approach it in a different way, not overplay and not underplay, and I wanted to really make sure that it was melodic, like when you're listening to the guitar from Boston, it's that melodic thing that's kind of that earworm that sticks in your head, that kind of a thing.
Certainly. So, we mentioned before that you have recorded several records prior to this one, and I know genre-wise you go all over the gamut, don't you?
I have. I grew up. I'm second youngest of 9, so I've been influenced by not just all genres, but all the different generations of rock and roll. I was the kid that would turn on Hee Haw just to watch Roy Clark and do he always used to do like an instrumental piece where he just really got down on the guitar, and I loved that moment. So I would watch Hee Haw just hoping that he would do that. So I was influenced by country. I was influenced by rock and roll, from the Beatles all the way to Grand Funk Railroad and Deep Purple and all that stuff, classic rock and roll. And so, I kind of have gone on a musical odyssey. My Brownsville is that, AC/DC, before AC/DC rock and roll show kind of thing. And but my sound started Americana. If you look at my first 4 albums, it was very Americana country. As a matter of fact, I had a song called Flip Flops that was played all around the country and overseas, and that has been my biggest song, especially for royalties. I love hearing that word. And but that song is done quite well, and so I kind of went down that trop rock area. But when you're playing on stage, opening up shows for Boston and Ted Nugent in the band Brownsville Station, you're going to get influence with rock and roll and hard rock and roll. So that kind of snuck its way back if you listen to the odyssey of Billy Craig solo albums from This Side of Somewhere all the way to Sonic Toonsmith, and definitely Beyond the Pale just basically threw everything out and said, okay, I'm going to just do a rock bass all instrumental album.
Talking with Billy Craig, you mentioned royalties. What's your view on things like Spotify and getting compensated or not so much, as the case probably is? Or is it something that you think, well, it's another tool, it's another way for me to get myself out there? It's probably 6 of one, half dozen of the other, I'd imagine.
Well, I've gone back and forth on it. Radio play, the royalties are still there, but you got to get the play, and having those. I think for the bigger artists, because it's if you're getting like, when you have 100 plays and you make a nickel off of it, that makes you a little bit jaded with the whole process, because artists need the revenue to go forward, to keep that creative
outlet
resources.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have the resources to go forward, either in the studio and marketing, all the stuff that you need that for. It's just like any other business, So if you saw cars getting .004 cents a car, you'd see all them jumping away from their business model. So, it's a hard call because they are slick services, and it makes the artist look good, definitely. And online, your fans have quick access, but for sure, I'd rather see them go to CD Baby and research and pull up Billy Craig and buy my albums that way, because then I actually get paid for the album. You don't have those physical copies like CDs and vinyl, although that's what I'm hoping to do toward the end of the year. I'd really like to do some vinyl. That'd be a lot of fun.
Are you thinking about the new record or across the board that you'd be maybe pressing some vinyl?
Well, you know what? I was thinking two things. I'd love to do a compilation, but I was thinking more so the brand new album, Beyond the Pale, on vinyl. And I was talking to a friend of mine. He has a shop that sells all those high-end stereos. So there's a market out there for great vinyl. So I'd like to do it. A lot of it for my own nostalgic purposes, because you and I both grew up, looking at, when I bought an album, I would read every ounce of print that would, I'd pull it out and look if it was a double album, anything, even the SKU for the name, the number for the album. I read everything on it.
I did too. Yeah, exactly. So all the thank yous, who produced it, even the length of the songs.
Yeah, and that's why I don't, and I think people are still that way. It's just, everybody, it's the culture, it's a quick culture, and people, they just don't think the same way. And the sad part is the media doesn't really, I don't know if it's the media or business, doesn't allow people that opportunity. They don't give them that opportunity to. Remember when you would buy an album and you could read all about either the thank yous and where they recorded it, where they mixed it, where they mastered it, everything.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the story, and I love the story side of it, and I think people would too. So I got a couple ideas I'm working on. We just did a big photo session yesterday, and I think what we're going to do is I'm revamping my website, and I think we're going to offer some great photo, like 8x10s with autographs and like a package deal where people get like a thumb drive with the songs. You get a 8x10 with an autograph, and who knows, maybe a dozen cookies or something.
Nice.
Something to eat. You always need something to eat.
Right. Well, since you brought it up,
people will pay for food.
Well, absolutely, it shows on me. I know about you, but it does on me. Well, let's go that route. Let's steer it to that place. So, Beyond the Pale, tell me a little bit about the background, about where you recorded it, and who worked on it with you.
That album is completely, we used a local drummer. It's all done here at All Things Media Studios here in Detroit area. It's all beyond the drum tracks. Once we got the drum tracks done, I added everything. So it's the bass, the guitars, everything is all Billy Craig. And it was a lot of fun to do. I didn't use it. It was just, most of that is, I'd love to use an actual bass player, but I knew the songs. Mm-hmm. You know, by the time that all the arrangements are done, the drums are done, it was just so much quicker just to pick up a bass and just jump through all the songs, you know, and the whole coordination bit, because I've used with other albums, you know, like banjo players, dobro players, bass players, and other guitar players, but their schedules are so busy, sometimes it gets difficult to do. So Beyond the Pale, it was kind of something that, and you know, everybody has epiphany in life, or you go through something in life where you're going through self-assessment, and it was something that I came back around to, kind of on my bucket list that I wanted to do, and I'm looking forward actually to doing a follow-up to Beyond the Pale. I don't know if I'll do any more after that, because I'm really getting anxious to write songs and start singing again as well. So the real trick is when I do a show, which isn't going to be that much of a trick because I have 5 albums to pull from now. So it should be a really fun show, and it should be interesting because it'll go from the acoustic to rock and roll to full out guitar, Olympics to back to rock and roll. So it should be a lot of fun once we get that put together.
I'm talking with Billy Craig. Let's talk about Brownsville Station. You joined when?
I think it's been about 7 years. So I think however that works out. I joined them, we're in 2019, so like 2000, what would that be? 12?
Yeah,
2012?
Yeah, yep.
Somewhere in 2012. The interesting thing is the way that story went down is the very first album that I have called This Side of Somewhere, that actually was a group of friends from Detroit. We got in a van. We had rented a couple days down at Sun Studio where Johnny Cash and Elvis and Jerry Lee Lewis got their start in the studio.
You bet, in Memphis.
Yeah, in Memphis. And it was something that we wanted to do, but part of the deal was I had to write some songs or come with a handful of songs. And I did not know it, but a friend of a friend was invited Henry H. Baum Weck, and he's the drummer from Brownsville Station. So I got to know him at that actual session, and we just hit it off like long lost brothers, you know. And so by the end of the session work, and that was the start of This Side of Somewhere. Those tracks were brought to Detroit, and we just hashed out that album. But Henry and I kept in touch over the years. He sent me he calls me up one day and he goes, "Hey, Michael Lutz, who is the other guy in Brownsville Station," he goes, we've been working on this new project. I want you to hear the CD and tell me what you think of the mix and all that stuff. And he sent me the CD. I listened to it, and first thing I did was send him an email and said, "Hey, this is really cool stuff. If you decide to take this on the road, I know a crazy guitar player that'd love to do it with you," which was me, obviously. And
right.
and they invited me to a session. We did a little bit of guitar work and some background vocals, and then we hit it off, and we did a short tour, put the show together, a short tour from Memphis to West Virginia, Charleston, West Virginia. And then we did some shows with Ted Nugent in Boston, and we've had a lot of fun. Last couple of years, it's been kind of low-key, but I hear rumblings of some projects that we're going to ramp up toward the end of this year, and then some shows toward the end of this year, hopefully.
So stay tuned, Brownsville Station fans.
Yeah, those Brownsville Station is, they got 8 albums out of material. They've charted well. They have a huge hit with Smoking in the Boys' Room. It's one of those songs. I wish I ever wrote that one, too.
Right.
I was actually probably 11 years old when that song came out, something like that. I do remember when it came out, and yeah, you had to be careful where you were getting caught smoking, although I didn't smoke when I was that age, and I don't smoke now. But the funny thing is, as it would be, there's nobody in the band that smokes.
Of course. Oh, that's good stuff.
Yeah, we've had a lot of fun, a whole lot of fun, not just live doing shows, but when you go to Michael Lute's studio, you're going into an atmosphere that's like a rock and roll museum. It's because not just the gear-wise, that's just one aspect, but he's got his memories on the walls, and it's just quite the experience.
Billy, if people want to find you online, buy your records, how can they go about doing that?
You know what? The easiest way is just Google Billy Craig. And actually, if you Google Billy Craig Beyond the Pale, you'll have a bunch of stuff will pop up. I do have a website that's being updated right now. It's billycraigmusic.us. You can go to that also, and it should be updated probably in the next few days. We got a lot of new content that we're working on getting in there, and hopefully in the next 2-3 weeks we'll put together a cool video. I want to get a really good video as well. So that's where you can find me. Just Google Billy Craig Music. Actually, is the best way to do it. Google will always find you or get you there.
This is true. Billy, thank you so much for the conversation and the time, and continued all the best.
Mark, thank you so much, and I really appreciate KIOW 107.3. I really appreciate you guys bringing me on board.
Our pleasure. For Billy Craig, I'm Mark Scar on KIOW.